Hi, Nicholas on film. Here today I'm talking about The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, 2008 movie I've been meaning to watch for a long time. Okay, so I remember trying to watch this movie back when it came out, at least on DVD, and I don't know if my memories match up exactly to the reality of what was actually in the movie, but all I remember is really old or aged Brad Pitt walking down some stairs, like all crickety, right at the start of the movie. And then I don't know, for some reason I just couldn't handle it. Like, you know, Brad Pitt, used to seeing him in all these action movies and stuff. So it was just like, I was very critical at the time of special effects too. Like, it had to be just right. So I'm a little easier these days. Plus, there's the benefit of time having gone by and things changing and there's like what is it? Something about those older special effects that have a certain charm. So it allowed me to actually enjoy the movie this time. I don't quite remember that scene of him walking down the stairs, but I mean, I get the point. Like him at the dinner table, him getting a bath and stuff. These other scenes, they just kind of all accumulate and basically are similar to that memory that I have in my head. So it wasn't too far off. But yeah, the movie did start off a little more interesting than my remembrance too. There's a build up and the whole birth sequence, and then the introduction of all these other various characters other than just Benjamin Button, which is what my memory was of. I thought the entire movie was just going to be just him and these odd special effects, which is definitely not the case here. So started off on the right foot. I was able to actually not just peruse, but sync to just go read through, do an entire read through of the screenplay recently. I do that occasionally before watching them these days. It makes it a little interesting. I don't know if I can necessarily spot like changes so much, but it just gives a little more weight to my viewing experience. Obviously, I know what's going to happen a little more, but at the same time, you can just kind of forget all that and just enjoy the flow of the movie. That there's when you turn your mind off, don't want to overanalyze like I'm doing possibly when I'm filming these sometimes. But regardless, yeah, it's there's a couple. Turns out Taraji P. Henson. I guess at the time she wasn't so famous. I see her in the news a lot more now, but her and she's with that guy and they're about to go on a date, and they it's nighttime, New Orleans, and then they're old-fashioned, it's like the 1930s, and they're going down the steps and they trip over a baby. So then they pull the cover off of it, and all of a sudden the guy especially, he jumps back like he's like in I don't know, he's sickened by what he sees. But the woman, she's in shock, but then she's like, her nurturing instinct kicks in, and there goes their date. She picks up the baby and says, someone left this child here, this sick child. They obviously didn't want it. And the whole beginning sequence, I mean, I could see like when I originally would have watched it at that time, didn't have a whole lot of patience, and more than anything, this is a movie that requires patience. It's about like the longevity of life and the changes that we go through. And I thought it was interesting. I guess I couldn't handle it at the time because it's from the duo. I mean, obviously there's probably some other people involved too that made Seven, the serial killer movie, like the MTV serial killer movie that was hugely popular. Then they made Fight Club, like pre 9/11, just like craziness, and then The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. All starring like the same actor, Brad Pitt's in all three of them. David Fincher directs all three of them. It was quite a divergence. at the time, in more immature days, I was like, I wanted to watch this. Now I'm like, I don't want to watch that other stuff. Those were bad influences. Might have led me down some paths I didn't want to go to. So it seemed more fun than they actually were. But this one, there's a lot to learn from it. Based off of supposedly an F. Scott Fitzgerald short story. His screenplay was written by Eric Roth, who currently is popular with doing as a main part behind the scenes guy on the Dune movies, Dune remakes, adaptations / remakes. I don't know if they're deriving their inspiration from the original movie or more from the books, but regardless, Eric Roth, he's good. He's got some good how-to videos on YouTube. Another major bit in the movie is it's a lot of, I don't know, cinematic trickery or creativeness or sleight of hand, but this whole sequence that leads to Daisy, she was turned down by Benjamin Button previously when he was in his older man version. She was really young. She wanted to spend the night with him, and he's like, go have fun with your friends. But then years later they meet, he's younger as he ages, and then she's like getting a little more tired of her routine, and but at this point she's kind of been holding a grudge or something, or I don't know, but he pops up and she's with another guy at the dance troupe, and she's kind of just like flaunting their relationship in front of him. He just kind of leaves the scene. He's like, I don't want to be here, I don't want to see that. Thankfully he doesn't like get mad and flip out or anything, but that ends up leading to this sequence where I was previously mentioning, where it's a lot of narration, but it's like he's talking about from all these angles of all these people and waking up, missing the taxi, trying to get to employment, breaking a shoelace, all this crazy stuff that he couldn't possibly have known. So I'm only realizing that now, thinking about it. But definitely an omniscient perspective. But it's all leading up to this sequence where Daisy walks out of the dance troupe and does a dance spin right into a car driving very fast, which incapacitates her quite permanently, at least her dancing career. Breaks her legs, and she's hospitalized, and Benjamin Button, being the nice guy he is and being there in town at the time, visits her, and she doesn't want him there. Probably, I don't know, maybe the meds or something, or just the shock, who knows, combination of other things, but tells him to go. But in reality that ends up leading them closer together somehow, that incident or him showing up, I don't know, but they end up, I can't remember exactly how, but not long after that they end up moving in together, and that's when their ages finally line up properly, where he's looks like what he should be at his age, and she's at the same age as him as well. So it's interesting. That's remember from the screenplays that I didn't expect that so much, because I remember my memories of the movie were like old timey, like the 1920s or 30s. So it's like I forgot that. I mean, F. Scott Fitzgerald, when he wrote it, he couldn't possibly have expanded upon it this much, but the movie is being narrated upon from the present, from the 2000s, literally from Hurricane Katrina happening in New Orleans. It's going on. There's a hurricane outside of the hospital where they're telling the story. So it's like, I liked that in the movie, because he starts off as an older man, which is what we're used to when we think of people now who grew up back then. They're older now, so it's like they tell stories, and it's like it's hard to really picture them being young, because you're just seeing them as an older person. You kind of just picture them as an old person back then. So in the movie he gets younger and younger, and we get closer and closer to the now. So when they shack up, it's like the 1960s, the Beatles, Twist and Shouts on TV. Things are starting to look more familiar. And it's like, okay, as the movie goes on, he looks more and more like the Brad Pitt we're used to, at least until he starts turning younger and younger. And we get more comfortable because it's like closer and closer to our present time frame. So it makes me want to see what happened. The whole affair sequence in Russia, it seemed highly accurate. I did mention it already. I don't know if I'll make it into this edit here, but it's very encapsulated. People trying to keep each other warm in the cold, kind of bending the rules, and being unrealistic towards their own feeling, like the reality of their situation. There's a really great like bookend to that whole sequence where she's like describes herself as when she was young, she tried to swim across the channel, being world famous somewhat. And then she said she almost got there but ran out of energy and then stopped like within sight, like because it started raining and I don't know, some other various reasons. And then she said ever since then she married someone like a spy whose life is fascinating and she's just been living in his shadow ever since. They've never done an interesting thing since then. And then like he touches her hand and she's talking just like, it's like squash that, that depression or whatever that's coming out of your mouth, that feeling, you can go past it, you can do it again, And then like later in the movie, they move on from each other, but he's back in the States. And it's like at just the right moment, like the TV's on, and he finds out some new information, some revelations, a lot of revelations in this movie. And then he sees on the TV some older lady, very recognizable. It's that lady. She finally swims the channel and has broken her record. The entire movie has these. There's a character, the African American guy. He's like he's the one who's going to go on the date with the nanny who ends up adopting Benjamin Button. I forgot to mention him earlier. Is that he has like acting instincts. His like grandfather or something was an apprentice to a famous actor, and then he starts quoting some lines. I don't think it's Shakespeare, it's something similar. And then he's like, see, I can act where he just chooses not to, but he's pretty good too. But then he like reveals that his the actor who his grandfather, if it was his grandfather, was apprentice of was John Wilkes Booth, the man who assassinated Abraham Lincoln. He's like, you just never know how things are going to turn out. So he said something like that. But yeah, I'd have to say of everything in this film, my thing that I enjoyed most was definitely the cinematography and the aesthetic, visuals, sound design, how it all, music, how it meshed together. I think the acting, had to be a little more subdued because of the constant use of special effects. So I think it was extremely important that they capture the atmosphere and feelings of sequences and made you enjoy being there, like on the boat, in the middle of the ocean. Even during the horrifying bits, like in World War stuff, it's still fascinating how it kind of captures this like snow globe effect where everything just kind of like all the pieces just kind of fit together in any environment. It's like and they're extremely unique from each other. And even time-wise, like as the time goes, it's like the different eras are encapsulated very well in the film. Yeah, that's my take on The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Came out in 2008, directed by David Fincher. His third pairing with Brad Pitt after Seven and Fight Club, and now this, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button from 2008. Quite a few years ago, but it's a very well done and extremely well put together movie. And the drama, fantasy, romance, it was quite successful. It made double its budget. The large budget at the time, 150 million. It's a very long movie. At the time, that wasn't as usual. Now it's like quite it happens quite more often, especially thanks to all these Marvel movies, which are just like, they don't really care about editing them down to the bone. They just kind of want to throw everything in there and just leave it in there. But at the time when this came out, it was more unusual. So if the movie was that long, you know, it had a lot to say. So definitely worth watching if you haven't seen it. If you've been any way curious about it, I recommend giving it a spin. So until my next perspective on a film, this is Nicholas on Film, and over now.
I tell you what, my knees are sore because I've been on them every night asking the Lord. I said, God, just bring them home safely. Remember what I told you?
You never know what's coming for you.
That's right. Sit down.